Alright guys, this is chapter 5, part 2. Like I said, hope you're loving this book. I'll do my best. Page 88 is where I'm starting, okay? Artemis was performing a little field surgery on the ferry locator. It was no mean feat to alter some of the dimensions without destroying the mechanism. The technologies were most definitely incompatible. Imagine trying to perform open heart surgery with a sledgehammer. The first problem was opening the cursed thing. The screwheads defied both flathead and Phillips screwdrivers. Even Artemis's expensive set of Allen wrenches were unable to find purchase in the tiny grooves. Think futuristic, Artemis told himself. Think advanced technology. It came to him after a few moments of silent contemplation. Magnetic bolts. Obvious, really. But how to construct a revolving magnetic field in the back of a four-wheel drive? Impossible. The only thing for it was to chase the screws around manually with a domestic magnet. Artemis hunted the small magnet from its niche in the toolbox and applied both pulls to the tiny screws. The negative side wiggled them slightly. It was enough to give Artemis some room to maneuver with needle-nose pliers, and soon had the locator's panel disassembled before him. The circuitry was minute, and not a single of a solder bead. They must use another form of binder. Perhaps if he had time, the principles of this device could be unraveled, but for now he would have to improvise. He would have to rely on the inattention of others, and if the people were anything like humans, they saw what they wanted to see. Artemis held the locator's face up to the cab's light. It was translucent, slightly polarized, but good enough. He nudged a slew of tiny shimmering wires aside, inserting a buttonhole camera in the space. He secured the pea-sized transmitter with a dab of silicone, crude but effective, hopefully. The magnetic screws refused to be coaxed back into their grooves without the proper tool, so Artemis was forced to glue them. Messy, but it should suffice, provided that the locator wasn't examined too closely. And if it was, well, he could only lose an advantage that he never expected to have in the first place. Butler knocked off his high beams as they entered the city limits. "Doc's coming up, Artemis," he said over his shoulder. "There's bound to be a customs and excise crew around somewhere." Artemis nodded. It made sense. The port was a thriving artery of illegal activity. Over 50% of the country's contraband made it ashore somewhere along this half-mile stretch. "A diversion then, Butler. 2 minutes are all I need." The manservant nodded thoughtfully. "The usual?" "I don't see why not. Knock yourself out. Or rather, don't." Artemis blinked. That was his second joke in recent times, and his first out loud. He better take care. There was no time for frivolity. The dockers were rolling cigarettes. It wasn't easy with fingers the size of lead bars, but they managed, and if a few strands of brown tobacco dropped to the rough flagstones, what of it? The pouches were available by the carton from a little man who didn't bother adding government tax to his prices. Butler strolled over to the men, his eyes shadowed beneath the brim of a watch cap. "Cold night," he said to the assembled group. No one replied. Policemen came in all shapes and sizes. The big stranger persevered. "Even work is better than standing around on a frosty one like tonight." One of the workmen, a bit soft in the head, couldn't help nodding in agreement. A comrade drove an elbow into his ribs. "Still, though," continued the newcomer, "I don't suppose you girls ever did a decent day's work in your lives." Again, there was no reply, but this time it was because the dockers' mouths were hanging open in amazement. "Yep, you're a pathetic-looking bunch, all right," went the butler. "Oh, I've no doubt you should have passed as men during the famine. You would have passed as men during the famine, but today's standards, you're little more than a pack of blouse-wearing weaklings." "Arrgh!" one of the dockhands shouted. It was all he could manage. Butler raised an eyebrow. "Arg? Pathetic and inarticulate? Nice combination. Your mothers must be so proud." The stranger had crossed a sacred line. He had mentioned the men's mothers. Nothing could get him out of a beating now, even the fact that he was obviously a simpleton. I bet a simpleton with a good vocabulary. The men stamped out their cigarettes and spread slowly into a semicircle. It was 6 against 1. You had to feel sorry for them. Butler wasn't finished yet. "Now, before we get anything get into anything, ladies. No scratching, no spitting, and no tattling to mommy. It was the last straw. The men howled and attacked as one. If they had been paying any attention to their adversary in the moment before contact, they might have noticed that he shifted his weight to lower his center of gravity. They may also have seen that the hands he drew out of his pockets were the size and approximate shape of spades. But no one was paying attention to Butler, too busy watching their comrades, making sure they weren't alone in the assault. The thing about a diversion is that it has to be diverting. Big, crude, not Butler's style at all. He would have preferred to take these gentlemen out from 500 feet with a dart rifle. Failing that, if contact was absolutely necessary, a series of thumb jabs to the nerve cluster at the base of the neck would be his chosen modus operandi, quiet as a whisper, but that would be deafening, the purpose of the exercise. And so Butler went against his training, screaming like a demon and utilizing the most vulgar combat actions. Vulgar they may have been, but that's not to say they weren't effective. Perhaps a priest could have anticipated some of the more exaggerated movements, but these men were hardly trained adversaries. In fairness, they weren't even completely sober. Butler dropped the first with a roundhouse punch. Two more had their heads clapped together, cartoon style. The fourth was to Butler's external shame dispatch with a spinning kick. But the most ostentatious was saved for the last pair. The manservant rolled onto his back, caught them by the collar of their donkey jackets, and flipped them into the Dublin harbor. Big splashes, plenty of wailing, perfect. Two headlights poked from the black shadow of a cargo container in a government saloon, screeched along the quail. As anticipated, a customs team was on stakeout. Butler grinned with grim satisfaction and ducked around the corner. He was long gone before the agents had flipped their badges or begun inquiries. Not that their interrogations would yield much. Big as a house was hardly an adequate description to track him down. By the time Butler reached the car, Artemis had already returned from his mission. "Well done, old friend," he commented, "although I'm certain your martial arts sensei is turning in his grave. A spinning kick? How could you?" Butler bit his tongue, reversing the four-wheel drive off the wooden works. As they crossed the overpass, he couldn't resist glancing down at the chaos he had created. The government men were hauling a sodden docker from the polluted waters. Artemis had needed this diversion for something, but Butler knew there was no point in asking what. His employer did not share his plans with anyone until he thought the time was right. And if Artemis Fowl thought the time was right, then it usually was. Root emerged, shaking from the pod. He didn't remember it being like this in his time, although truth be told, it had probably been a lot worse. Back in the Schilling days, there was no fancy polymer harness, no auto thrusters, and certainly no external monitors. It was just gut instinct and a touch of enchantment. In some ways, Root preferred it like that. Science was taking the magic out of everything. He stumbled down the tunnel into the terminal. As the number one preferred destination, Terra had a fully fledged passenger lounge. 6 shuttles a week came in from Haven City alone. Not on the flares, of course. Paying tourists didn't like to be jostled around quite that much, unless, of course, they were on an illegal jaunt to Disneyland. The ferry fort was crammed with full moon overnighters complaining about the shuttle suspensions. A beleaguered spirit was sheltering behind her ticket desk, besieged by angry gremlins. "There's no point hexing me," squealed the sprite. "There's the elf you want right there." She pointed a quivering green finger at the approaching commander. The gremlin mob turned on Root, and when they saw the triple-barreled blaster on his hip, they kept right on turning. Root grabbed the microphone from behind the desk and hauled it out to the extent of its cable. "Now hear this," he growled, his gravelly tones echoing around the terminal. "This is Commander Root of the Leap. We have a serious situation above ground, and I would appreciate cooperation from all you civilians. First, I would like you all to stop your yapping so I can hear myself think." Root paused to make sure his wishes were being respected. They were. "Secondly, I would like every single one of you, including those squalling infants, to sit down on the courtesy benches until I have gone my way. Then you can get back up to griping or stuffing your faces or whatever else it is you civilians do." No one had ever accused Root of political correctness. No one was ever likely to either. "And I want whoever's in charge to get over here. Now!" Root tossed the stand onto the desk. A blare of whistling feedback grated on every eardrum in the building. Within fractions of a second, an out-of-breath elf-goblin hybrid was hobbing at his elbow. "Anything we can do, Commander?" Root nodded, twisting a thick cigar into the hole beneath his nose. "I want you to open a tunnel straight through this place. I don't want to be bothered by customs or immigration. Start moving everybody below after my boys get here." The shuttle port director swallowed. "Everybody?" "Yes, that includes terminal personnel, and take everything you can carry. Full evacuation." He stopped and glared into the director's mauve eyes. "This is not a drill." "You mean yes," said Root, continuing down the access ramp. "The mud people have committed an overtly hostile act. Who knows where this is going?" The elf-goblin combo watched as Root disappeared in the cloud of cigar smoke. An overly hostile act? It could mean war. He punched in his accountant's number on his mobile phone. "Bark!" "Yes, this is Nimbus. I want you to sell all my shares in the shuttleport. Yes, all of them. I have a hunch that the price is about to take a severe dive." Captain Holly Short felt as though a sucker slug was drawing her brain out through her ear hole. She tried to figure out what could possibly have caused such agony, but her facilities didn't stretch the memory just yet. Breathing and lying down was about all she could manage. Time to attempt a word, something short and pertinent. Help, she decided, would be the one to go for. She took a trembling breath and opened her mouth. "Nope," said her treacherous lips. No good, incomprehensible even by a drunken gnome's standards. What was going on here? She was flat on her back with no more strength in her body than a damp tunnel root. What could have done this? Holly concentrated, skirting the edge of blinding pain. The troll. Was that it? Had the troll mauled her in that restaurant? That could explain a lot. But no, she seemed to remember something about the old country and the ritual, and there was something digging into her ankle. "Hello?" A voice, Hello? A voice, not hers, not even elfin. "You awake then?" "One of the European languages?" "Latin?" "No, English." "She was in England?" "I thought the dart might have killed you. Aliens' insides are different from ours. I saw that on television." Gibberish. Aliens' insides? What was this creature talking about? "Well, you look fine. Like Muchacha Maria. She's a Mexican midget wrestler." Holly groaned. Her gift of tongues must be on the blink. Time to see exactly what kind of craziness she was dealing with here. Focusing all her strength at the front of her head, Holly cracked open one eye. She closed it again almost immediately. Then there appeared to be a giant blonde fly staring down at her. "Don't be scared," said the fly. "Just sunglasses." Holly opened both eyes this time. The creature was tapping a silver eye. No, not an eye, a lens. A mirrored lens, like the lenses wore by the other two. It all came back in a jolt, rushing to fill in the hole in her memory like a combination lock clicking into place. She had been abducted by 2 humans during the ritual, 2 humans with an extraordinary knowledge of fairy affairs. Holly tried speaking again. Where am I?" The human giggled delightedly, clapping her hands together. Holly noticed her nails, long and painted. "You can speak English? Well, sort of an accent. What sort of accent is that? Sounds like a little bit of everything." Holly frowned. The girl's voice was corkscrewing right to the middle of her headache. She lifted her arm. No locator. "Where are my things?" The girl wagged her finger as she might at a naughty child. "Artemis had to take your little gun away and all those other toys. Couldn't have you hurting yourself." "Artemis? Artemis Fowl. This was all his idea. Everything is always his idea." Holly frowned. Artemis Fowl. For some reason, even the name made her shiver. It was a bad omen. Fairy intuition was never wrong. "They'll come for me, you know," Holly said, her voice rasping through dry lips. "You don't know what you've done." The girl frowned. "You're absolutely right. I have no clue what's going on, and so there's no future in trying to psych me out." Holly frowned. It was obviously pointless playing mind games with this human. The mesmer was her only hope, but that couldn't penetrate reflective surfaces. How the devil did these humans know that? That could be worked out later. For now, she had to figure a way to separate this Vasquez girl with her mirrored sunglasses. "You're a pretty human," she said, voice dripping with honeyed flattery. "Why, thank you, Holly. Why, thank you, Holly. I was in the local paper once. I won a competition, Miss Sugar Beet Fairy 1999. I knew it. Natural beauty. I'll bet your eyes are spectacular." "Oh, so everyone tells me," Juliet nodded. "Lashes like clock springs." Holly sighed. "If only I could see them." "Why ever not?" Juliet's fingers curled around the glasses stem. Then she hesitated. "Well, maybe I shouldn't." "Why not? Just for a second." "Oh, I don't know. Artemis told me never to take these off." "He'd never know." Juliet pointed to a view cam mounted on the wall. "Oh, he'd find out. Artemis finds out about everything." She leaned in close to the fairy. "Sometimes I think he can see inside my head, too." Holly frowned, foiled again by this Artemis creature. "Oh, come on. 1 second. What harm could it do?" Juliet pretended to think about it. "Nope. None, I suppose. Unless, of course, you're hoping to nail me with that mesmer. Just how stupid do you think I am?" "Oh, I have another idea," said Holly, her tone altogether more serious. "Why don't I get up, knock you out, and take those stupid glasses off?" Juliet laughed delightedly, as if this was the most ridiculous thing she had ever heard. "Good one, fairy girl." "I'm dead serious, human." "Well, if you're serious," sighed Juliet, reaching a delicate finger behind her lenses to wipe away a tear. "2 reasons. 1, Artemis said that while you're in a human dwelling, you have to do what we want, and I want you to stay on that cot." Holly closed her eyes. Right again. Where did this group get their information? And 2, Juliet smiled again, but this time there was a hint of her brother in those teeth. 2, because I went through the same training as Butler, and I've been dying for someone to practice my pile driver on. "We'll see about that, human," thought Holly. Captain Short wasn't 100% yet, and there was also a small matter of the thing digging into her ankle. She thought she knew what it could be, and if she was right, then it could be the beginning of a plan. So in this chapter, the new technology, they added like the magnetic stuff, and we've still got that technology going about the lenses and the reflection. Cool stuff. See you guys for the last part in just a little bit.